Well, I'm sure it's hard to believe, although most of the people watching yesterday's video won't be shocked. The paint didn't really work out. Kind of had a gut feeling that it wouldn't, and a little bit of time and a little bit of sleep didn't make it better. We're working on the cabinets for our kitchenette. If you're just joining us, we have been working on this project for a long time. We started with all the work to build these boxes, and then the uppers, the lowers, the drawers, installing the drawer hardware, and then we've been working on getting the face frames built and sanded, ready for primer, and then we worked on the doors, and we got those all built, assembled, hardware installed, hinge cups drilled, drawer fronts. You get the idea. There's a lot of work that led up to this. Yesterday, we kind of made a bold move and we tried to knock out paint. If you watched our channel for any amount of time, you know that I hate paint. And I hate paint because I don't understand it. There's like a finish I have in mind, and I have this vision for what I want it to look like, and I have yet to find a way, airless, air sprayer, spray paint, brush, roller, urethane, varathane, enamel, alkyd enamel, like I can't seem to ever get the finishes that I'm looking for. I thought we would try to use basically the same product that's available in a can that you would brush on or you could spray on, but comes in a paint can, a spray paint can. And the thinking there was that it dries very quickly. We're doing this painting in our garage, and we have a massive exhaust fan upstairs that we're able to use to push air through the garage and just get rid of this spray paint stuff. And it works really good. But that doesn't mean that I want this stuff sitting down here for 2 days while it's curing. So my thinking was to use spray paint. So here, that's where we're at right now. We just spray painted one side of about 2/3 of our doors and our frames. And it wasn't going well. I guesstimated we would need about 3 to 4 coats of paint because of how well the lacquer that we used went on our drawers. 4 coats, perfect. This stuff, 7 coats, and it still would not penetrate the grain on this plywood. There's something about this stuff, it wants to stick to itself. It kind of has like surface tension. Kind of how you can fill a cup over the rim with water, and that's because the water wants to stick to itself more than it wants to spill over. And that's exactly what this doggone paint is doing to us. So we thought, you know what? Well, first of all, we ran out of paint last night because I way underestimated the amount of paint that it would take to do this project. Kind of. I feel like about 4 to 5 coats, these were looking okay, but we kept adding paint, trying to get this stuff to flow, to fill in and kind of even out. And it didn't work. I mean, it just didn't work. For whatever reason, this paint just avoids any gaps or voids or anything. It's just really super frustrating. So thankfully, we had some time today just kind of stop, look at it, really think about this. My goal was to take all this stuff to the hardware store and talk to the people there in the paint department and say, what do we do now? Do we sand this down, remove this, and switch to a different product and try again? Do we keep at it, just keep sticking paint on there, hoping it'll work out? Because if you look really closely here in the edges where we tried to paint inside this little recess, it actually doesn't look half bad. But as soon as you get away from there, that's when this texture starts to show up. What's kind of weird is it doesn't really look bad, right? It doesn't look horrible. It just doesn't look the way we wanted it to. On top of that, now that this stuff has had time to cure, I feel like the sheen is too high. We were thinking that satin would be kind of boring or dull, so we went with a semi-gloss, and I guess we're realizing now that the semi-gloss is too shiny. One of the lessons that has come out of this entire house build is that there's a time and a place to hire things out. And with this stuff, what we're trying to kind of do with this kitchenette cabinet project is work through the problems, the challenges, and figure out what can we build. And are we happy with it, or do we just want to buy this stuff? This whole project has been very challenging, a huge, steep learning curve of new skills that we didn't have before. And it's been going pretty dang good. until finishes. So what I did was actually went to a local cabinet shop, and I'll be darned, they actually have a paint booth and they do their own finishes. Not all cabinet shops do. Some of them sub it out. Some of the cabinet shops sub out all their doors. They don't even make any of the doors because it's so time intensive, and there are companies that all they do is cabinet doors. Can you believe that? So this company happens to actually do their own finishes in-house, and they had a lot of really great information about why this is happening to us and how to solve it. So I took this door with me and I said, here's what we've got, here's what's going on, and I'll tell you where we want to be. And they said what we'd like to do is do a varnish finish. It's something that's actually standard in the cabinet industry and will solve this problem. There's another several issues to this. We primed this with gray primer, and we probably shouldn't have. Maybe we should have found a white primer, because part of that gray is actually showing through. So this looks darker than it really should. It should be true, like true white. Anyway, so what we're gonna do, we sent off all the data for our doors and our face frames only to get a quote from them to spray this with a varnish. I think the conclusion we're coming to is that when it comes to finishes, at least on this stuff, although we've got doors and trim and a lot of other things that we're gonna need to finish, so we've gotta figure this stuff out if we wanna try to do it ourselves. But when it comes to cabinetry, depending on how this goes, we may end up just outsourcing the finish. I think we can do everything right up to spraying this stuff. We don't have a paint booth. Varnish is supposed to be sprayed, I think, with an air sprayer. We don't have one. I don't even know how to use one. And we don't have the paint booth, and we don't have the skill or the experience working with varnishes, which is an interesting product because there's a catalyst and there's a time window and it's temperature sensitive. And I'll tell you guys, finishes, you guys out there that make things look beautiful, you guys are awesome. I mean, it just takes a lot of patience and a lot of time to learn how this stuff works. And on top of the ability to create wood that looks good, the ability to make the finish look just as nice, totally different skill. So we actually have some pieces that we never even primered, and we're gonna take this door or these doors in and have them spray a sample. We just wanna see what they come up with and make sure that we're gonna be happy with it. Assuming everything goes well there, we'll move forward. We'll just take everything to them, have them spray it. When it's all done, we'll bring it back, and then we can move on with the installation. So with all that time saved, we can move on to different phases of this project. We've got a lot of other work that we can do. What we wanted to do for our top was a one-piece stainless steel top, sink, and backsplash. But we're not going to be able to do that right now because I just don't feel confident enough to order that product until these cabinets are installed and we can actually measure that. But what we can do is create a beautiful butcher block style top. And we have two sinks that are on order. One arrived today, one will arrive tomorrow. We'll probably do a video showing those and kind of comparing them and explaining what we're thinking about them. We're also wanting to kind of decide which one that we want. So we're gonna make a butcher block top for this guy, and we'll use stuff from the boneyard, and we'll start working on that project today while we wait to hear back from the cabinet company. I think butcher block is something that most everybody knows exactly what you're talking about, but just in case, here's an example of something that is butcher block style. This was a gift that was given to us by some really wonderful friends. It's a beautiful piece. We haven't really been able to display it in the house. We've been keeping it protected because we're under construction and we don't really have anywhere to show it. And this is not really a cutting board. It's kind of just a place to store things, maybe on the table. But isn't this beautiful? So this is a butcher block piece that's made with end grain that's showing. Kind of like if you cut a 2x4 on the end and then glued it all together. So the long grain is actually here on the edge. We're not going to be doing this style. I don't think it makes a lot of sense necessarily for a countertop. So this is just kind of an idea about what we're working towards. One of the really cool things about a butcher block is that you can basically use waste material and make something super practical. So all these offcuts from the cabinet frames and stuff is no problem to add them to our butcher block top. It'll give it more character, and this, which would normally just go into the hot tub and be burned as fuel, can actually be turned into a countertop. We basically have our sink here, and I think to make life a little bit easier, we're gonna build this in 4 pieces. So we're gonna start with making 2 long strips, and then we'll have 2 smaller pieces in the middle. The logic there is that these pieces in the middle can actually fit through the planer, and so we can glue them up a little bit thick, and then we can just plane them down to the exact thickness. And that means we should get a very nice, even top, instead of having to spend half of our life trying to sand this thing all down. So we're gonna head out to the boneyard, and we're gonna use our linear footage calculation here and see if we can find enough wood to build this guy out of wood that's left over from our timber frame. Oh, we're coming for you, boneyard. We're coming for you. So what we're hoping to find is things that are 1 inch or better, because if we can use 1 inch material for the top, we can actually get away with less boards overall. It won't be a tremendous amount. So for every 4 boards, we can lose a board basically. But we also get a chance to kind of burn up some of this odd stock. Anything that's 1.5 inches or better, we'd rather leave it for A, a slab, or B, lumber. Anything less than that is good for trim or things like cabinets that we're working on. So let's look for anything that's 1.25 inches or less. So this one looks like it's probably close to, yep, that's 1.25 inches. That would be a good candidate. Boy, that's a wide board. 15 3/4. We got for thickness, that's 1.25 inches. That's under 1 inch, under 1 inch, under 1 inch. That one's the wrong species. Just had an idea, guys. So we have this little pile right here. It's just, I don't even know. It's just offcuts, random pieces, stuff left over after projects and whatnot. But it's still good wood. We can use it for something, right? But that's the excuse everybody uses to have this monster boneyard that basically just rots in place. And we're trying really hard to burn through this stuff and make something out of it. But we're looking over here at the firewood pile. That's right, the firewood pile, the stuff that we just chucked over here because we said it's not worth our time right now. And there's a lot of stuff in here that looks like, I'll be doggone, it would make a great countertop. So we can save this from the firewood stove and turn it into a countertop. I think between the stuff we can just dig out of here quickly and easily and the stuff that's sitting here on the boneyard, without getting into the big, long, nice lumber that we might end up using for window trim or door trim or something like that, we can probably get this countertop built out of nothing but waste wood. So there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what we'll probably have to do is use a circular saw and just snap a line on this and just make a square edge. And then from there, it's game on, just getting it all ripped down into usable lumber. A nice wide piece. Oh yeah, that's looking nice there. That's a nice looking piece there. Ooh. Man, it must have really sucked to cut that into firewood. But what's deceptive is that at the other end of this was probably this massive chunk of Wayne. Like on one end, it probably was this 20-inch good board, because everything that ended up in our boneyard was this type of wood, but it was long, where it's deceptive because it's such a beautiful piece of wood. But I'm pretty sure at the other end, it probably narrowed down to just about nothing. So in my defense, we were not horrifyingly wasteful when it came to that. Like, look at the amount of bark on this chunk of wood. I mean, it gives you some clue about what was happening at the other end. That's actually worthy of the boneyard a little bit. This guy has just been redeemed. Oh yeah, come with us to the wood shop. That'll work. Fail. Didn't survive. Uh-oh. That's starting to look like a countertop. More rescues. That one's borderline.
that one. Take that one. Let's do any of this live edge stuff. Let's kind of ditch that. We were thinking we'd keep that for slabs and all of our wisdom, but I think it's time to make something out of it.
So obviously we've chosen a very laborious way to go about building this countertop, but reusing this lumber is going to feel awesome. So what we're going to do is vacuum each piece and try to get as much of the gritty dirt off of them as possible to keep from dulling our blades and stuff, especially the planer. That's where it's really going to start to become an issue. I'll jump to start ripping the easy peasy ones. Some of them have a mill edge, and we can run them just through the joiner to get that edge nice and flat. Then they're ready to run through the table saw. Some of this stuff we're gonna have to use a circular saw. I just can't really see a better way to get the live edge off and get some semblance of a square edge. Then we can start back at the joiner and start working through the table saw. Once we get all that stuff done, we need to cut them square at the end and then start running stuff through the joiner. The only thing is we were really hard on our joiner working on the frames, the face frames and doors for the cabinets. So we're going to need to do a switcheroo on the planer blades before we get too carried away. That was a table saw marathon, if I've ever been in a table saw marathon. Holy cow. What did we end up with? What's the grand total?
Conservatively.
I'll take it. Done. So according to my math, we need 132 feet, and conservatively we have 191 feet. So we should have enough to make a couple of these. And if we screw up, it's our own fault.
But that said, we know there's a lot of boo-boos and defects and stuff like that. They're going to end up getting cut out of this. So like this knot, that's probably going to tear up the planer. We don't really want to put that in the planer, or that, or that. I know there's a few pieces that have kind of wonky ends, just issues with different things like the joiner and whatnot. So those pieces will end up getting cut off. We have a lot of crooked pieces like this. So good. All right, I think that's pretty much going to do it for tonight. I definitely learned a few things tonight. One, shop vacs make horrible dust collection. It turns out you plug up the filter really quick and then they pretty much don't have any suction left. I think we do need to give that dust collection baggy majigger thingy another wash. We did that when we first started the whole cabinet project, and we haven't done it since, but we filled that bag about 4 times. And if my prediction is right, tomorrow we'll probably fill that bag twice with planer shavings, because we've got a lot of planing to do. We did not use all of the firewood that we salvaged. We set aside some of the long stuff, mostly because it's so thick. I had thought I'd set up the table saw pretty optimistically at like 1 5/8 inches, thinking a lot of the stuff wouldn't be that thick, and we ran into some 2 inchers that were just a little much. And the thing about the Shopsmith is that adjusting its height is not easy, especially after you've started and you've kind of got everything calibrated. So I figured, why don't we just pick through stuff? We'll work with things that are 1.5 5/8 inches, and looks like we got plenty of stuff. We stopped doing the edger joiner because we wanted to find out if we had enough linear feet. We're just not into doing way too much work. And when we're all done, we've turned this firewood pile into an even smaller firewood pile that doesn't even have to be split. It can just go straight into the hot tub. So tomorrow we've got to put everything here through the edger again to get this side, one rough side, flat. Then we can run everything through the planer and start working on get everything down to dimension. Once that's done, we can cross-cut and remove all the knots. Well, actually, we're going to cross-cut knots out first so we don't damage the planer blades. Then, once we're through the planer, we can actually cut things to length and start working on getting the ends very square. And then I think the only thing left to do after that would be run it back through the edger one more time and make sure all the sides are super duper flat. And then we can do the really fun part, put glue and clamp everything. And I've been thinking about cheating and maybe trying to find an adhesive that we can use in our cordless caulking gun. That way we don't have to squeeze the glue bottle for 150 feet. For those of you who have been paying very close attention to how well the Shopsmith is doing, take a look at that. That's right out of the table saw. Look at that. No joiner. Hasn't even been through the joiner yet. So I have a hunch that once we run everything through the joiner, if we don't have any issues, this butcher block is going to look amazing. I just have to share that when we're patient with this machine and take care of it and you get everything calibrated, it's pretty incredibly precise. It just blows my mind that you can put those 2 pieces of wood together and it's that tight of a joint right away. We pretty much didn't stop table sawing for 2 hours. So we gave this machine a workout. It's warm for sure, but I definitely would say we did not overheat it and overwork it. Part of that's being patient and letting the tool do the job, right? Keeping the RPMs up. But I can tell you that little job site table saw, man, you run that thing for 30 straight minutes like we've done a couple of times, like when we cut the furring strips for our cold roof, for example, or all the lumber for our SIPs. Yeah, we overheated it a bunch.